Hey, what's going on everybody? Nick Pulaski here with another project for you guys here today. Someone was actually going to throw this thing away, can you believe that? But what I'm going to do is I'm going to transform this thing into reptile cages. So without further ado, let's get this project started. My name is Nick Pulaski. Ever since I was young, I've had two passions, wildlife and filmmaking. My goal is to combine those two passions to make wildlife content. My passion for wildlife and my collection of exotic species is constantly growing. Come follow along as I pursue my goals of educating, inspiring, exploring, and conserving wildlife, all while having fun, seeing the beauty of our natural world. So to start this build off, I decided I should go with taking off these shelves. The process was really easy. All I had to do was use my handsaw, and then on each piece of the board on the sides, all I had to do was saw the sides because they were held in by two little pegs, and then the boards would easily just slide out. I did this process for all the bordering pieces of shelving, and then in the end I was able to just take out the big piece in the middle of shelves. This process left the base completely hollow on the inside and ready for work to be done. And it also made this really lightweight and easy to move around for the rest of the project. After getting the shelving out, I went to my local hardware store to get the hardware and the wood that I needed. These boards I'm using needed to be sanded just because they are going to be painted with the epoxy down the line, and it's recommended to do that. As well as the boards were not that smooth, so I also wanted to make sure that they were as smooth as possible, just so when I'm coating it, it looks nice. After sanding, I started putting on the L brackets on the wood. I put one on each corner of the wood, just to keep it stable. After doing this process on the two boards, I would put them inside, make sure that they're level, as well as measuring in between just to make sure the spacing was correct, and then finally screw them into place. I measured twice, and I drilled once. You also want to make sure that the boards are standing firmly upright and level, so it does not look crooked. Once the boards were firmly put into place, I started putting on the wood putty. All I had to do was put in a small amount, just lining the border of the wood, filling in any cracks that I saw. This would make sure that each tank is sealed up perfectly. After I let the wood putty cure, I then sanded it down. The next step for the process was to put on the big plywood backboard. After placing on the backboard, I then started measuring out the top portion where the light screening will be, making sure all three cuts on the roof of the cage were even. This will add ventilation as well as a lighting source for the cage. After placing all my marks, I then began drilling all the holes so the jigsaw could go through. I then put lines on my marks and then started using the jigsaw and cut the lines, cutting out perfectly spaced and even squares. As you can see, the inside portion of the furniture is actually made of cardboard and it's hollow. This gave me some sort of a challenge because it was hard to drill into it, and also I had to border it off to make sure that the reptiles would not be able to go inside it. I then went back to the plywood backboard and I traced a bordering line all across the back before taking off the backboard and then doing the same thing with the jigsaw like I did with the roof, cutting out small little rectangles for screening, adding extra ventilation to the enclosure. Once the rectangles were cut, I then drilled the backboard back onto the enclosure. This got me really excited because it gave me a better look of what the enclosure will look like. But I was far from done. The next step was to seal the enclosure. I went with the sealant called Pond Shield. It's commonly used for ponds, as well as being used on aquariums, making the epoxy non-toxic. It comes with great step-by-step instructions and tells you the perfect ratio to use for a 30-minute span of time. I definitely would recommend only mixing 30 minutes worth of pond armor. As you come up towards 30 minutes worth of time, it starts to stick and harden more, and it doesn't paint on as well. For the total project, it took me 3 layers of epoxy to seal off the enclosure. After putting on the first coat of epoxy, I then cut out the window screening for the plywood backboard, and then I siliconed it into place. Once the window screening backboard was put into place, I then added layers of duct tape on the roof of the enclosure. After putting the duct tape on, I then finished putting on the layers of epoxy. To make sure the duct tape stayed firmly into place, I then added this trimming on the interior and the exterior of the roof of the enclosure. Not only will it hold the duct tape into place, but it'll also hold the light screening as well firmly. It was time to then fully seal off the enclosure and add doors. The doors I was adding were going to flip open. To make these doors, I used plexiglass, wood trimmings, screws, and silicone. Before screwing the plexiglass onto the wood, I made sure to run a bead of silicone on the trimming of the wood before sandwiching it on. This would then make a sealed bond between the plexiglass and the wood. I then added lockable latches into place as well as a handle, finishing off the project. These enclosures are built for my red-tailed green rat snakes. I absolutely love watching them move about their enclosures. This build was challenging at times as well as fun. I hope you guys found this video fun as well as informative, as well as tell me if it inspired you to create something for your reptiles. To see more fun content like this, if you could subscribe to the channel and like the video, I would greatly appreciate it. And until next time, I'll see you guys.